Hey guys, and welcome back for another tutorial. Today is going to be a spooky tutorial. We're going to be learning how to make this adorable little trick or treat bucket. Now, believe it or not, this is actually a fairly easy project. So if you're a beginner sewist, rest assured I'm going to give you the confidence so that you can actually make this beautiful Halloween bucket. I love these, especially when little ones are carrying them. These ones have a curved side to them, so it kind of keeps all the candy contained inside of the bucket, which is really nice, especially with the little ones when they're running around and they're shaking their buckets and things are flying out. I absolutely love this one. I put a jack-o'-lantern face on the front of this, and I do provide pattern pieces for the one that I have here. I sewed it on, so it is cotton fabric, but I also provide you with an SVG file so that you can go ahead and use your die cutting machine to be able to cut out iron-on or HTV vinyl and put it directly onto your bucket. So I'm going to talk about the pattern. So the pattern is for purchase, and there will be a link in the description box below where you can go over to my Etsy shop and grab this beautiful bucket pattern. If you are just tuning in and it has just been released, there will be an introductory offer for 50% off the pattern. So check that out. You still have plenty of time to be able to make this beautiful bucket. I know we're getting close to Halloween, but it doesn't take very long and doesn't take very much fabric. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Comment down below if you have any questions throughout the tutorial. And I also opened up the channel for members. So if you're interested in having an ad-free experience or early access to videos and tutorials, there is a join button down below as well. So if you want to go ahead and skip any of this and just get straight to the tutorial, I have provided chapters down below so you can see those little lines on the timeline, and you can go ahead and skip forward, or you can go down to the description box and there will have a list of all the chapters and you can find which part of the tutorial you want to jump to. But we're going to go through all the things that you're going to need to be able to make this beautiful trick-or-treat bucket. Okay, so for this trick-or-treat bucket, I use cotton fabric. That is a woven fabric. I find it is best for this type of project. What is really going to make this bucket the best bucket it can possibly be is going to be the interface. That's where this project will shine, and you will get the beautiful shape that is this Halloween little pumpkin shape. So it's very important for you to go to the store and get some very heavy duty type of interfacing. Now, everything that I am speaking about is going to be in the pattern, so you don't have to worry about remembering everything that I say. I give you all the different types of interfacing that would work best. For this one, I actually used a product called Decor on the exterior fabric. I did use fabric from Michaels, and this one is actually a sparkly fabric. And the sparkly fabric, if you've ever seen it, actually already is a little bit stiffer because it's sprayed with the glitter. I like that it's already a little bit stiffer, and then I used the Decor on just the exterior, and then I used a medium weight interfacing for the interior pieces, so like a SF 101 or something like that. Again, all that stuff is provided in the pattern. For this one, I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be using a product called Shape Flex. And a lot of times when you see these buckets in the store, it has sort of a foamy texture to it, and that's what it is. It's a thin kind of 1/4 inch foam. I think it's less than 1/4 inch. Let me see. No, it's 1/4 inch foam, and I went ahead and applied it to all the back of my exterior pieces. Now you can get a fusible Shape Flex, or you can get non-fusible, and that's actually what I have. And I used some school glue, and I just basted it on. So I sort of, I'm saying basted, but I actually painted the back of the fabric, and then I stuck it onto my Shape Flex pieces. And then I ironed it, and that kind of activates the glue to have it dry quicker. So I did that. I also, in the pattern, I have the pattern pieces here. There is a fabric template, and then there is also interfacing templates. So if you're using something such as a Peltex or a Decoville Heavy, you might want to keep that out of the seam allowances. So that's why I provide you with the interfacing templates. But for this one, for this shape flex, I want to keep it in the seam allowances. So I'm going to use the regular size template. So I cut out all my fabric with this one, and then I cut out all my interfacing with this one as well. And that's the same with the bottom, which is a hexagon, I think. Hexagon is 8, right? And then I have the hexagon template without the seam allowances. So again, we talk about that. In the pattern, I am using a black fabric for the interior. And again, I'm using that medium weight to heavy weight interfacing on the back, and I covered the whole thing. You just kind of get to know what your interfacings are going to do and choose the best one that you think will work best for your project. For the handle, I did choose to use a Decoville Heavy. So there's Decoville Light and then a Decoville Heavy. And that's what I put here, but I only put it in the middle. You can do the whole thing. I find the foam is probably going to be too thick for the handle. Or you could just do a 1-inch strip down with the foam. It's really up to you what you want to do, but I do think that having the foam on the back of this is going to be too much. So I went with the Decoville Heavy. So it's kind of a little bit of an experiment to see how it works out. But I think it'll be fine. It just depends on what type of handle you want. If you want a handle that kind of just stays up, then you want to choose something a little bit thicker. If you don't really care, like this one kind of flops down, it's fine. It's not going to be as nice for photos, but for me. But for you, you know, your child's going to be holding it the whole time, so it's not even going to matter, right? But that is pretty much it for everything you need to know about what I'm working with here. Again, we made this bucket in the tutorial in the pattern, so you'll learn different things throughout that tutorial as well. I just want to give you options, but I can't make several buckets in one video. That's the problem. I also want to let you know that in this pattern you will get a bonus little mini bucket pattern, and it is so cute. So it could be made for dolls, or it could be made to just have on display somewhere. You can put a little pumpkin jack-o'-lantern face on this as well. This is going to be the little pattern here, so you'll get that with this pattern, which is so cute. I also love to use them just as little baskets around the house. So I made this one with super cute little fat quarter, and I can put my clips in it or something, you know, jewelry or whatever, right? I think it's so cute. This pattern will be available soon, but there will be 3 different sizes, so I'm super excited. It's not exactly the same as this, but it's on the same kind of idea and is constructed the exact same way. Okay, so one last thing, if you do decide to make this, I would love to see it, so please share it over on social media and tag Charmed by Ashley so that I can share it with my community and we can see your littles if you wish to share with their adorable little Halloween trick-or-treat bucket this year. Okay, I'm going to change the camera angle and we're going to get to sewing. Alright, here is a closer look of all the fabric we're going to need. So I have my exterior fabric and I have all the panels cut. You're going to need 8 of them, and I applied that foam flex on the back. You can go ahead and see how thick this is going to be, but it's going to be so good and it's going to hold its shape beautifully. Then I have the bottom exterior again with my shape flex, and then all the interior pieces, 8 of these with medium weight to heavy weight interfacing on the back, and again the interior bottom, and then we have our handle. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on the handle first. So I'm going to place these to the side. Okay, so here's my handle piece, and on the back I went ahead and put the Decoville. So I just put it on the middle. So this is a 2-inch strip on a 4-inch wide handle. And this is going to be super thick, so I don't want it to be too much to be able to get my needle through. So that's why I only put it in the middle. So there's only going to be 2 layers of that Decoville. We're going to go ahead first and we're going to fold it in half. And it's going to be harder because of that Decoville. It is very thick. And we're just going to put in that first but it's kind of like a paper product where it does give you a good fold. And you can see that it's like literally creasing like paper. And I got this Decoville at Joann's, but I don't know if they're carrying it at Michael's. If your Michael's is starting to carry interfacing and fabric, there's a chance that they might start carrying the Decoville as well. I don't know. If not, it's online at many different shops. It's becoming a very popular product. Okay, now we're going to open it up and we're going to fold in the sides, and we will press. And the reason why we did the first fold was just to put like kind of like a line down the center so that you know how much to fold. Because I'm using that Decoville, it kind of gives me an edge to fold the fabric, so that's nice. But if you're not using Decoville, that center crease gives you that guide to know where to fold the fabric nicely. I'll flip it around. We'll do the other. Okay, and now we're just going to refold that initial fold. And I like to put clips just to make sure that it stays lined up nicely. And if you've already done that first initial press, then you don't really have to press it again. But you can if you want to. And sometimes I'll use a clapper, which is just a block of wood, and I'll put that on top of it after I press it again, and it'll really flatten out that handle. So it's much easier to sew. But this Decoville is super heavy, so I'm going to be using a thicker needle, a leather needle, a denim needle, just so that I don't smash off a needle into my face, which would be horrible. There we go. So now we can go ahead and sew. I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides, and that's going to give us a nice, beautiful strap. Okay, so I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've turned up my stitch length. And I changed my needle to a stronger one for this Decoville. But you might not need to, depending on the interfacing you chose. Okay, and I'm going to go the other side. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and work on the exterior of the bucket, and we are going to take 2 pieces to start. And when you look at your pattern piece, you're going to notice that there is a seam allowance that is 3/8 of an inch, and then there's a little line down at the bottom. When we sew, we're going to start at the top, we're going to sew all the way down, and we're going to stop 3/8 of an inch before we get to the bottom. And we don't have to do it at the top. Now I find that doing it this way helps when attaching our hexagon bottom. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to do it at the top. So if you do have a directional fabric, you need to be mindful that this is the top So we're going to sew right to the top, and then we're going to leave that little gap at the bottom of that seam allowance. So I'm going to take my two panels, and we're going to place them with the right sides together. And then I will clip. Now this is going to be a little thick. And I don't mind it being in the seam allowances because it is actually going to add extra structure to each of the panel seams. So that's why I chose to. If you don't like that and you don't want this to be in the seam allowances, feel free to use that template like I said earlier and cut it down. So we're going to go ahead, do that seam just like we have here in the pattern. And to make things go a little bit quicker, I like to take my lining and I like to do it all at the same time. So every time I do something to the exterior, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the lining fabric. So I'll go ahead and just clip two of my interior pieces together only on one side. We're using that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to go ahead and then we're going to stop. Just like that. So you can see with that nice dark thread there, we're leaving just that little bit right there. And you can already see how it is taking shape nicely. And like I said, we're just going to repeat that with the lining. I'm not going to show every step of the lining just because it is repeated. But just so you're aware, we're doing the exact same thing for the lining pieces. Okay, so now we have two panels together. So now we're going to go ahead and take another one, being mindful that we do have a directional fabric, and we are going to go ahead and line up one side, and we will clip that. And just remember, every time you go to attach a panel, make sure your fabrics are not upside down and that you are doing, whoop, that broke, the correct seam allowance, just like we did here, leaving that little bit at the bottom. So here, all right. And this is how it is looking, and we're going to do the exact same thing for our lining. Trying to keep everything nicely lined up. Okay, so let's do our next one. I like to always do the top first. So if you keep yourself in sort of a little routine, you will always remember that you start from the very edge and you end short. Just like that. So you get the idea. And if you keep it up so that you can see what you did in the previous one, then you'll also remember. Just like that. Okay, so we have 3 panels now, and this is where I like to stop. If you want to go ahead and put on a pumpkin face, this is the best time to do it. You could put the eyes on first before you assemble it, but then it's more tricky because then you're gonna have to put the nose on and then the smile. So I kind of just do it after I have 3 panels sewn, and it's a little bit, you know, fiddly because it's already starting to curve, but it's still manageable. I did it just fine. I actually did a blanket stitch on my sewing machine. That there's photos in the tutorial to show you how I did that, but if you wanted to also do a die cutting machine, it would be super simple to do some vinyl, like a vinyl face, which again, I will provide you with that SVG file so that you can upload it to Cricut Design Space or whatever die cutting machine you have. Now you might notice that there is some kind of wrinkling, and this isn't a fusible product. Like I said, I did have to use my school glue to baste it on, but if you notice, once I flip it, all of those wrinkles go away. So if you're like, oh no, it looks bad, don't worry. Once it has been flipped right sides out, all that fabric seems to look beautiful and flat, and I'm just so excited. Okay, so I'm not going to do a face on this one because I think that the fabric speaks for itself. It's beautiful, but I'm just going to keep going. So let's just hammer through this. And you can even take another one and put it on the opposite side so that you don't have to do one at a time. Okay, so now we have 5 panels, and with some movie magic, I'm going to attach the other 3 because you get the idea. Okay, so now we have all 8 panels attached for the exterior and the lining. So now you're just going to attach the last 2 to make the full circumference of your pumpkin. Make sure that all your panels are the right sides if you are doing directional. That is something that I would definitely do, is I would make my project to its completion and realize, oh no, one's upside down. Okay, just like that. And then we'll do the same thing with the lining fabric. Then we can start attaching our base. Okay, so here I am actually going to put the handle on. I'm going to baste it on. You can start putting on the bottom if you want. Now I'm just going to talk about the handle for just 1 second. We have that ready to go. Now when it comes to the face, because I put my eyes on a panel, The handle didn't really go from panel to panel because then it would have been this way. So I actually attached my handle along a seam. So for this one, because I don't have a face, I am just going to attach it centered in a panel. It's not ideal to have it on a seam just because there is a lot of bulk there, so you just need to be aware of that bulk that you will have with that seam, including the handle. But I mean, it wasn't too much to go through, but just be aware that if you are using anything heavier than Decoville, just be ready for that. And I like to have a little bit of my handle actually hanging off, and because of that, the reason why is because when I go to sew it, if for some reason the fabric, because it is woven, begins to unravel, then I don't have to worry about it coming through the seam. So we're going to do that 3/8 of a, we're going to do a 1/4 of an inch to baste it on, but then when we actually put our lining in, then we'll have a 3/8. So it'll have a lot of strength on that handle, but having a little bit kind of hanging out will just give that security that if it does start to fray and break down, you can of course put some glue to prevent it from fraying. That handle will never ever come out, because you know, just running around with a handle, it's very well possible that that could happen over time. And something like this could last potentially forever if it's taken care of, right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and baste that on, and then we can begin to put the bottom of our bucket in. As you can see, I do have a Janome MC6700P. With this sewing machine, I actually don't have a piece that I can take off so that I can have a free arm. So making a project like this actually becomes a little bit more difficult, but if you do have a free arm, it might be easier for you to slip it on so that you can access this area. Because I don't, I'm going to have to do it this way. It's kind of a pain, but that's just the cards that I was dealt with. I love this machine. I wouldn't change it. This is a very small inconvenience, but if you do have a free arm, feel free to remove it. And then you'll be able to sew it a lot better, especially when we go to put that lining in. You're going to be so happy you have it. It's not usually common. Most machines come with free arms. This is a little bit more heavy duty machine. So I won't cut that extra fabric off. I'm just going to leave that, and it's going to live inside of the layers of fabric. Okay, so I have my handle now installed, making sure that it is at the top of your directional fabric. Thank goodness I noticed, I realized. And now we can start to put the bottom on. Okay. So, because we left those little gaps in the seam allowance, all we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom of our bucket and we're just going to line up one side of our hexagon with one panel of the side of the bucket. Now, what you're going to do, because we have that seam allowance that's stopped, we're actually going to sew from the end of that seam allowance to the next seam allowance, and that's going to make sure that there's no holes in the fabric. And then when you see on here, you will actually have a perfect 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, with all of the threads intersecting at each point. And that's going to make for a beautiful hexagon. It's going to be so nice. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Okay. So I'm just going to do one at a time. I find that it's easier. You could possibly go across and do, you know, maybe. Let me know if that's something that you did, but I'll just do one at a time all the way around. And I'm going to repeat that step with the bottom of the interior. Now I forgot something. I am human. I am really, really human. What I forgot was I forgot to leave a hole in my lining for turning. So basically what I need to do is I need to cut my seam open. And that's okay. You know, that's something that I've made a bunch of these, and every time I forget because you're just sewing along and you don't realize. But you want to do this before you completely assemble your bucket, or you're not going to be able to flip it right sides out. And I really like doing it this way because I've seen a lot of these little buckets and they have bias binding at the top. So you could do that if you are more comfortable with bias binding. I'm more of a bag lady, so I actually prefer to have a hole in the lining for turning. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just sew over these edges so that I can lock that in, and then it won't rip open further when I do actually go to flip it right sides out. But yeah, that is correct in the tutorial, the pattern that you buy. So you don't have to worry about that if you do follow the pattern. But again, I'm human. It happens all the time. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and put our hexagon base on. So just make sure that you're pushing the side panel, the panels next to it, out of the way. You're not sewing on those. That's why we left that gap, is we want the corner of the hexagon to go to the corner of the bottom of the panel. All right, let's go sew this. So we're going to load it into our machine, and you can go to the end of that row of the side seam there from your panel, and we can begin. Just like that. And you can see on the bottom that I don't go to the very edge, so that I can go ahead and easily attach the next part of my hexagon. So we're just going to line up that corner with that corner, clip that, and then it's getting a little thick because of that interfacing. There we go. Okay. Then we can just take the opposite corner. Okay. Almost done. Sure that handle don't get in the way. All right. Two more. It's actually a little bit more trickier with that, with the foam. You'll find that you do a better job with regular interfacing if you use that. All right, and the last one should just fit right into place. Theoretically. Okay. And no one's perfect. But this is how it should look. It should look like that. If it doesn't, that's okay. That's okay too. All right, so we have our interior and exterior complete. As you can see, the bottom looks as best as we can. This one turned out better just because the foam is a little bit crazy, but it still turned out great. If you're worried about the bulk, you can go ahead and chop off the corners of the hexagon. And if you're worried about any of the sides, you could use pinking shears and you can cut the fabric. Helps to prevent fraying. Now I don't care. Some people do, and I don't. The thing about this project is that I also find that leaving that fabric in here, although it creates bulk, it also adds a little bit of structure as well. So I'm okay with leaving it. Now we're going to go ahead and put one inside the other. Now I kind of go back and forth which way I want to do this, which way do I think is best. And usually I like to flip my exterior bucket right side out. This is a good time for you to be able to inspect it as well. You can see how beautiful it's turning out. Making sure everything has been done correctly, poking out all of the seams. Bottom looks good. So now I'm just going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to insert it inside this. I have the handle here. I'm just going to flip it down. You can even flip it kind of like that, just so that it's completely out of the way. And then we'll sort of squish it and then we'll insert it. And then you're able to access the hole in the lining to be able to turn it up better. So now I'm just going to take clips and we're going to line up all of these seams. And you can kind of nest your seams if you want to. And that just means pushing, either splitting them open on the front and back, or pushing one to one side and the other to the other side. You're pushing that seam allowance the opposite way, and it's just to help to reduce the bulk, because if you were to have all the seam allowance going one way, then it might be noticeable and hard to get through. So I just usually just push one way and one the other way. Okay. Making sure the middle of each panel is lined up too, especially the ones with the handles, because the handle might be pulling down. Okay. All 8 panels, and now we can go ahead and sew a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all across the top. Okay, so again, this might be a little bit tricky on my machine, but if you have a free arm, this is going to go so much easier. But for me, I'm just going to flatten the fabric so I can get it under here, and then we'll just begin. And then once I do one panel, I like to shift and keep going. And again, shifting. Might need to pull in some areas gently. Keep going. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab some stuffing. Pillow stuffing to be exact. And you'll see what that's about in a second. But we're going to go ahead and find our hole. And we're going to carefully pull the exterior out. I was worried when I used the Decoville that I was going to ruin it because it's kind of has a papery texture. I was pleasantly surprised. But if you were to try to use something like just a regular Decoville, I fear that it's too thick that you could create creases in your bucket that would then not look as nice. Okay. Oh, it's looking so good. Now I'm just folding that edge down. Deep inside the bucket. We are going to do a top stitch, but I'm going to stuff this. And this is just going to help give it shape. Kind of like something I would do, and I would just kind of leave it, especially with this flex foam. I kind of want to train it. It seems like this part is just slightly caving in. Something else I might try is steaming the seams and then leaving it like this. Oh, it's so nice though. I love like stuffing the buckets and then like really getting a good look at it to see how I've done. Now you don't have to do a top stitch at the top if you don't want to. I did one here, but you can really see the difference between the foam and the Decoville. I'm really liking the foam a lot. It's called Flex Foam. But once your bucket is full of candy, you're not going to know either way. So if you're not too concerned and you just want a bucket for your kid, a really, really cute one. How cute is that? Oh, I'm obsessed. I am absolutely obsessed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, take the stuffing out, and then we're going to do that top stitch. It's going to be tough. And I'm also going to close up that hole on the inside that we left for turning. And I'm just going to do like a quick top stitch with matching thread. So I'm just going to pull it out and then fold in the raw edges. And you're never going to see it again. It's on the inside. You could do an invisible hand stitch too if you want. If you're, you know, wanting to sell them and you want them to look, you know, super pretty. But okay, let's go do that top stitching. I'll do this first. Okay, and then I'm just going to shove that back in to our bucket. And I'm trying to really push that fabric on the inside. Okay, so we're just going to slowly but surely and every time you get to a side seam, just take it easy. Even if you need to hand crank. Now, if you find that this is too thick and you're like, I should not have done that, and the next time I make one, I'm not gonna, you can keep the seam, the interfacing out of the top seam allowance. If you want to keep it on the sides, which is something that maybe, but again, I don't mind the seam, the interfacing into my seams because it does add like structure, especially in a project where you want structure. You can see that I'm pulling it down a little bit because I want to see that exterior fabric. I want the black fabric to be sunken in to the bucket as much as I can. And just take your time, no rush. Okay. Okay, and we're done. How cute are these little trick-or-treat buckets? And they're really not that hard to make. I'll tell you that the longest part of this process is probably just choosing the adorable fabric and then cutting it out. But to be able to whip up one of these little guys, you got plenty of time. So I hope that you try it. I hope that you share it. All of my social media is linked down below. Anything that I use is over at my Amazon as well. So if you're interested in any of the tools that I use throughout my videos, you can check out my Amazon storefront, which is also linked below. And I hope that you join the channel, or at least subscribe, so that you can check out more fun tutorials in the future, because Christmas is coming. I know. Oh my goodness. I always get super crafty around this time of year, and you're gonna see some really, really fun projects. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave the stuffing inside of this bucket for a while, sort of train the interfacing to stay in this shape, and then it's gonna be beautiful. And it's just, I mean, I'm so excited to walk the streets with my little ones with these cute little buckets. So thank you so much for watching. Check out the pattern, it'll be linked below, and I will see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye guys!